Hey everyone, this is Matthew Janda for CardRunners, and I'm here with Cutoff vs. Button vs. Blind Play, Part 4, facing 3 bets from the big blind. So what are the goals for this video? Well, we're first going to do a quick overview of the difference between the big blind and small blind 3-betting range, because in the last video, I didn't really get to talk about the big blind 3-betting range too much when we're facing a 3-bet from it and we're in the cutoff. Then we're just going to jump in and randomly generate some boards. Once again, emphasis is placed on speed rather than precision to try to mimic having to make decisions in real time. So we're going to jump right in for the most part in this video, and it should be one that's reasonably easy to watch because we're not going to spend too much on slides. We're going to be talking about like actual hands and randomly generated boards. So yeah, I don't think it will be one that's too difficult to follow, and hopefully it will be a little bit more fun to watch than some of the more theory-intensive videos. So let's quickly look at the big blind 3-betting range. And go ahead and just kind of take it in for a second, but I want to quickly contrast it with the small blind 3-betting range. So in the small blind, we've talked about this already, but I don't have a cold calling range in the small blind when the cutoff opens. So because of that, we just 3-bet all the hands that we think make profitable 3-bets and fold everything else. So because of that, the 3-betting range is not polarized. It consists of only the good stuff when we 3-bet from the small blind. And if you wanted to, you could call it like a linear 3-betting range, and that would probably be a good term for it here because it's not polarized and it only includes, pretty good hands. Whereas in the big blind, we do have a cold calling range. So because of that, the big blind 3-betting range is more polarized. I still don't like the term polarized all that much here, because when you use the term polarized, it works really well on the river, and it sort of implies this, here's our value bets, here's our bluff. Whereas if we're 3-betting something like king-queen, I'm not even positive 3-betting king-queen's right in theory. It's not an awesome hand, and we're 3-betting it because the hand's pretty good, and we don't want to deny the opponent his equity. So the term polarized doesn't work perfectly here. But just note that since we are in the big blind, it's closer to a polarized range because we're calling with all this medium strength stuff. We're calling with ace 10 to ace 6. And then we're 3-betting the weaker aces that can maybe make some of the better aces fold. Likewise, we're calling with all these, medium strong suited connectors, and we're 3-betting the weaker ones because these suited connectors still have very robust equity. But by the same token, 7-6 suited would probably make a profitable cold call in the big blind. We just think it's a little bit more profitable to 3-bet because its equity is so robust. So before we jump into randomly generating boards, just understand that the big blind range, I don't really like the term polarized. I don't really like the term linear. It's definitely not condensed. There's no real perfect way to describe it in my opinion, but just understand what we're doing. We're 3-betting, we're 3-betting the good hands for value. We're 3-betting some pretty good hands because they do pretty well when they're called, and we want to deny the opponent from realizing his equity. So, that's why we're 3-betting ace-jack suited. We're 3-betting ace-3 or ace-2 because they have a good amount of equity, and they can make some better aces fold. And then the suited connectors we're 3-betting, not because they don't make profitable calls, but because their equity is so robust, and we want to keep this range reasonably strong so we can 3-bet more aggressively. So, yeah, a pretty complex range that has definitely been something that took a while to really get to this point over the last few years, but this is currently what I'd recommend right now. The other thing I want to quickly do is I want to take the cutoff 3-bet calling range. So I just copied and pasted, and we're going to include all ace 10 off and king jack off. I don't think it's that big a deal. Talked about this before. And let's compare it to the small blind 3-betting range and see how much equity each range has. I know I've done this before, but honestly, I don't even remember, so I highly doubt you guys do from the first video. So the small blind 3-betting range had 53% equity, and let's compare it to the big blind 3-betting range. The big blind 3-betting range has 55% equity. So that doesn't mean one range is better than the other, because we can't determine what range is better from equity alone. But just looking at this, I actually do think the big blind 3-betting range is a little bit stronger because the big blind 3-betting range, since we're only 3-betting 9.2% in the big blind, whereas we're 3-betting 15% in the small blind, because of that, the really premium hands are going to make up a higher fraction of this range. So I'm learning as we go too. So because of that, I'm just saying, you know what? I think we can actually 3-bet a little bit more aggressively maybe. I still am not in love with 3-bet bluffing hands like king 2 and king 3 suited here, but I'm actually going to just get a little crazy with it, and I'm going to throw in like 9-7 suited and 6-4 suited. So I'm going to 3-bet slightly more aggressively. I know that's different than what I did when I made the preflop ranges in the first video, but again, I'm learning as we go, and now after having looked at how much equity this range has. And I know we looked at it before, but looking at it again, and then just really thinking, because we're 3-betting a smaller percentage of the time here, aces, kings, and queens, and ace king are going to make up a higher fraction of this range. I do think we can 3-bet a little bit more aggressively than we currently are.